Welcome in, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Let me get my screen share up here, and we can go ahead and get started. If someone could just give me a voice check and in the NFL Fantasy channel, just to make sure I'm sounding good. Everything looks good on my end. All right, balls deep saying I sound sexy, so good to hear. It looks like we got McBobo, we got Blake, and BD. BD said he wouldn't be able to talk. Bobo, I just heard you. Blake, are you here as well?
Hey, I'm here. What's up?
Perfect. What's going on, Blake? And thanks for joining, McBobo. Are you guys ready for a good week 2?
Oh, you know it. Hell, I'm ready for second half, baby. That's where the real action is.
Yeah, McBobo, I've seen doing well on the second half props action, specifically for college. It seems like you've been doing well, huh, McBobo?
Call it. I like the NFL, honestly. I was enjoying the shit out of that. I killed it. Monday, Thursday was great. You still had a better. I literally could have just played your slip instead of the 5 slips I played and made more money, but it was still really good.
Awesome. Yeah, good to hear. I finally hit a 6 pick on the second half
I
promo
know
that
it was
Prize Picks
beautiful.
ran. It's been way too long, so felt good to get one under the belt and hopefully more to come today. So here we go. Let's jump right into it. NFL main slate week 2. I thought I went through and eliminated the QBs that I didn't really want to play, but let's start with Blake. Blake, starting with the QBs here, do you have a one guy that stands out above the rest, or is there a few guys that you're kind of targeting in on?
Um, I think I really like Justin Herbert this week.
Yeah.
Uh, I think they're gonna pass a lot this week, especially with Eckler out, and like a stout run defense from the Titans. So I'm banking on Herbert this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And that Tennessee defense is a bit of a pass funnel. They are better against the run than they are against the pass. They kind of dare teams to pass on them. So that kind of fits right into how the Chargers want to play, especially without Eckler, like Blake mentioned. So I like Herbert quite a bit too. I don't think he's going to come in with that much ownership. You can see Fantasy Labs has him for 6%. Oh, let me hold on here. There we go. I just perfect. All right. So yeah, 6%. I aggregated these projections so that we can get a better view of what's going on in the industry. Take a few different projections and kind of aggregate them together. So yeah, 6.4% for Justin Herbert. Yeah, can't argue with that. I want to say he's like the 5th or 6th highest owned. Yeah, you can see it right there, the 6th highest owned quarterback. So I think that's a great call. I like Herbert as well. I'll be coming in over the field on him. McBobo, same question. Do you have any quarterback that you're really liking today?
Haven't had any strong leans. Obviously, Justin Herbert's in a good spot. Also, looking at T-Law, he looks like he can do pretty well. I liked how he looked against Kansas City in the playoffs last year. He just came up short. I think he can perform very well against this defense, and I think he can get some big numbers there versus Kansas City today. Justin Fields, another one too. I think he can take advantage of Tampa Bay today. So that's my lean.
Yeah, absolutely. And both Blake and McBobo brought up two of my favorite quarterbacks as well, in Herbert and Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is in a really good spot, really fast-paced game. Obviously against Kansas City, who is a team that can push the other team into a big score. Kansas City obviously gets Kelsey back today too, so you'd think that their offense looks a little bit better than it did in week 1. They also had the mini bye week, where you play on the Thursday before, and then you have the long, 10-day layoff before your next game. So I expect them to look a whole lot better than they did in week 1, and I really like both of those guys, Herbert and Lawrence. I'll throw out some other guys, and McBoa also mentioned Fields as well. I'm not in on Fields as much today. I do like it from an ownership perspective, as you can see, like just under 3% here for Fields for someone who has a very high ceiling. You'd expect him to be 3%. I think he's that low because the game environment versus Tampa Bay isn't all that great. Excuse me. It's an outdoor game as well. Neither or Chicago plays really slow, likes to run the ball, but all of those reasons are why Fields isn't going to be played. So I think it's a really interesting play there, even though I'm not really on it myself. I do have some, but I think I'm coming in like 1 or 2% across my 150 lineups. I'll throw out some other guys too. Obviously, I think Josh Allen is probably the number one play on the slate. If you're playing cash games, I'd really like to get up to Josh Allen. In tournaments, I'm going to be coming in a little bit under the field because, as you can see, this 17% is also bringing up his pass catchers, mainly Diggs. But even Kincaid is starting to get some ownership as well. I know people were talking about him being sort of sneaky. When we get to tight ends, we can talk about his ownership, but it was kind of creeping up. I think as people want to play Allen, but maybe don't want to play into the ownership that Diggs has, are looking for a pivot, and that's why Kincaid is kind of popping up late here in the week. But on paper, Josh Allen is a really great play. If he was lower owned, I'd be all over it. But as you can see, he's far and away the highest owned QB here. Obviously, Mahomes and Lamar right around Josh Allen are going to be far less owned. So I think that they're both interesting plays. And then Joe Burrow looking to bounce back, 9%. I think this is a fair ownership. But I really think that the Browns defense is very good and Baltimore's defense not as good. And I think that this game sets up a lot better for the Cincinnati offense. So I'm willing to bet on the Burrow bounce back. We should trademark that, Burrow bounce back. That's got a nice ring to it. And then last guy here, or last couple guys, I really like Geno Smith and and Daniel Jones. Man, there's these three guys right in here. Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, and Geno Smith, I think, are all in good spots. Good game environments too. Specifically, the Indianapolis-Houston game has a really nice pace to it, at least from what the teams were doing last week. And then Seattle-Detroit playing indoors. Game can get really nutty. I believe they had a really high-scoring game last year. Detroit's defense is not scary at all, so I like Geno there. I see we had Johnny join the chat. Johnny, do you have your stuff set up, or is your mic working? I saw Johnny unmuted, but I don't hear him, so we'll give him a second. Go ahead and talk, Johnny.
Okay, no, it's still push to talk now, apparently. That was what I was saying. I said, is it push to talk today? And I guess it is. I don't really have my stuff set up yet. I'm working on breakfast right now. But I like the quarterbacks you just mentioned, particularly Geno and Daniel Jones. What I'm going to be doing today, so I've got 2 different 20 maxes. And pretty large field stuff. So I'll be a little bit playing those guys you mentioned that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Johnny, it sounds like you're driving, so drive safe. And sorry to put you on the spot there. But yeah, it sounds like we're on the same guys there. And without spending too much time on the quarterbacks, we'll get over to running back here. All right, McBobo, we have quite a few chalk pieces. Chalk, for those that don't know, just means popular pieces. I'll filter by projected ownership here. You could see Josh Kelly and A.J. Dillon, kind of the two guys that are benefiting from their starting running backs being out in Austin Eckler and Aaron Jones. Joshua Kelly, far and away, going to be the chalk. I actually don't think this I think one of the sites probably needs to update their projection because I think Kelly's probably closer to a 15-point projection. How do you feel about these guys, Nick Boba? Are you okay eating the Kelly and Dillon chalk, or are you going elsewhere?
Just looking at the prices for some of my options, I guess, at running back, I'm hard pressed not to. Dillon is definitely a running back that I could definitely get behind. He's had a lot of success working alongside of Aaron Jones in that backfield, and we know that when Aaron Jones has been injured, he can step up and take on that extra workload. So that's definitely a piece of chalk I could chew on for sure. I'm not so sure on Kelly, but I could definitely attest to Dylan being ed, edible piece of chalk.
Yeah, absolutely. Blake, did you have anything you wanted to add there? And feel free to dive into some running backs that you might want to pivot to if you have any pivots off of Kelly or Dylan.
Yeah, I'm actually not playing any Kelly this week. I don't
Uh-huh.
have any Kelly. I got a little bit of Dylan. I mean, I'm just mainly staying off of Kelly just because I know it's gonna be a tough matchup for him. I'm guessing the Chargers are gonna be up early though, and they might run the ball, but I don't know. I'm just staying away from it personally with the ownership. Um, but some of my plays that I'm playing this week are James Cook, Bijan. I know I got a lot of them. I got some Gibbs, a lot of Rashad White actually. I guess the Bears just suck, so and I got a lot of Bucks D. Go Bucks because I'm from Tampa, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good call on specifically White is someone that's really interesting to me. I know he did very bad last week, but a lot of times 1 week samples, people can tend to overreact. What I see when I see his box score is he had 17 rushing attempts and 2 targets, played on the majority of the snaps, 54 out of 68. That's a workload that not a lot of running backs in the league have. Now, I'm not saying that that's sticky. I'm not saying that it's going to happen every single week, but I do think that this game sets up better on paper for the Bucks than it did last week. Now, the game environment was probably a little bit more appealing last week versus the Vikings, who play fast and throw the ball a lot. Kind of the opposite here for against the Chicago Bears, but Chicago's defense, like Blake mentioned, is not good, and you could see the Bucks playing from ahead here, and maybe White has a little bit easier time on the ground than he did last week. As you can see, he was really inefficient last week, but they really don't have anyone else behind him. So I like White too. I'm actually over the field on him. You can see he's coming in around 11%. I want to say I could check right now. My current run has me at 16%. So yeah, I'm a little bit higher than the field. I like that call. James Cook is another good call too. I think, at 13%, that's a good way to get exposure to that Buffalo offense without playing into the Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs chalk. So I like James Cook. He's in a really good spot. You could see Buffalo playing from ahead too. Now they're throw happy even when they are ahead, but James Cook actually was involved pretty heavily in the pass game last week. So that's really encouraging. You see 12 rushes. That's 6 targets, which is really nice. Really, really nice. Gibbs, the question with him all week has been workload, obviously, and the news has been trending in his favor. He did have you can see only played on 19 snaps. However, another way to look at that, though, is he had 9 touches on his 19 snaps. So when he's in the game, they're using him. And if he's going to, play more snaps, you could see him getting a lot more touches. So despite him only playing on, roughly 30% of the snaps, I think that his outlook is a lot better this week, and that Detroit-Seattle game environment is really intriguing. And then Bijan's not someone I'm on. I actually had to force him in some lineups just to make sure I had some exposure to him. Overall, just this Atlantic Green Bay game to me is one that feels like it's going to be really slow. However, if I was going to play someone from this game, I do like the running backs better than the passing game. So Bijan and obviously A.J. Dillon, who's going to be chalky, but obviously I shouldn't say in a great spot, but he's in a spot where he should get a lot of touches, and it's possible that Green Bay is, this game is basically a pick 'em. I think Atlanta's a 1.5 point favorite. So either team could have the lead. I think both teams want to run the ball here. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think Bijan is going to come in very, very low on him and Saquon, kind of in this spot where they're expensive, not quite up with McCaffrey, not quite down with the Pollards, the Henrys, the Jacobs. So I think that they might get left out of the shuffle here. But let's see here if there's any other. I know that I like the counterpart to Gibbs. I like Montgomery quite a bit. Even with Gibbs getting 9 touches last week, Montgomery saw 21 attempts. Now didn't get any targets, which I thought was a bit strange. He is playing like the pass protection downs, so I think on those third downs are typically passes. So I do think the 0 targets was a bit weird. But even if Gibbs does get more touches this week, I don't think that's gonna take away too strongly from Montgomery. I still think he can be in that 15 to 17 attempts range and hopefully gets a couple targets as well. So I like Montgomery. And then another guy in that same game that I'm high on is Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker also coming off a subpar week 1, but the numbers are really good. You can see 12 attempts and 5 targets, and the game environment did not go their way at all. They were down for, I think, the entire game. I don't think they ever had a lead against the Rams last week. I think this game against Detroit is going to play much faster. It's in a dome, so I really like Seattle as a whole this week, and specifically Walker. And then the last guy that I'll bring up here is someone that I brought up in chat earlier. Let me find him, Isaiah Pacheco. This is really an ownership play. You can see, under 3% in a very high total game. It might be, I believe it's the highest total game on the slate. Yeah, 50.5 for the Chiefs Jags. There's some injury concern with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Not that I think that's a big deal, but Isaiah Pacheco coming in at 3% in a really, really nice game environment. 8 attempts, only 8 attempts last week, 4 targets. Only played on a little bit less than half the snaps, but if Edwards-Helaire is out, even if he's not, I still like Pacheco. I think that they could play with a lead here, and if they do, I expect more attempts, and I think that this is sticky. This 3 to 4 to maybe 5 targets a game is really interesting. So I'm not like super heavy on Pacheco. Like I said, he's coming in at 3%. I think I have 12%. Yeah, 12% right now. So it's about 4x the field, but still not like a ton of ownership on him, and that's kind of the main appeal for me. All right, let's move on to wide receiver here, and we'll get McBobo back in the mix here. McBobo, do you have any wide receivers that just jump off the page to you?
Yeah, my leans right. I'm looking at one, Calvin Ridley. Obviously, I love that connection between him and T-Law is going to be great. Sun God, obviously, a good spot there. And there's one more, Keenan Allen with the Chargers against Tennessee. I think that having the pass-catching Eckler out, having to go with someone different there, running back, and versus a weak secondary in Tennessee, I think you're going to see big numbers today for the Chargers receiving core, and I think Allen's going to be the biggest benefactor from that. So, and I like his price. I don't think 7,100 is so bad for the ceiling that he can achieve today.
Yep, totally agree. I like all of those guys. And yeah, I think Keenan, out of the top end guys, Diggs, Chase, Amon-Ra, Devontae, is going to come in lower owned than all of those guys. And yeah, without Eckler, he has really good splits without Eckler, meaning, in the games that Eckler misses, his target share climbs, his overall yardage climbs, and all that. So I really like the Keenan play, and like McBobo mentioned, it's goes well against that Tennessee defense, which is a bit of a pass funnel. And then Ridley, touched on Ridley too. I believe he was the one who mentioned Trevor Lawrence as well. So yeah, Trevor Lawrence to Calvin Ridley stack in that KC game is really nice. Yeah, the game, we already talked about the game environment, 50.5 point total. So I really like the Ridley call. And then already talked about the Detroit and Seattle game environment too, so won't spend too much time on that, but I like Amon-Ra St. Brown as well. Blake, any wide receivers you'd like to add there?
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking at my highest own right now. I got Debo. It's actually my highest own. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Calvin Ridley, Zay Flowers, and let me check one more time. Let me see what my other one was. That's someone else.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time.
Tyler Lockett. He's simply mispriced at 6,100, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. We've kind of beat the drum on the Seattle Detroit game, but I like Lockett quite a bit too. I already talked about how much I like Geno, and then I'll throw in DK Metcalf there too. I think that while Blake was saying that Tyler Lockett is underpriced, and I do agree there, I think Metcalf is a little bit overpriced. And I think that's going to keep their ownership down. You can see both Metcalf and Lockett are both under 5%. This game environment is so nice. I think Lockett and Metcalf are great tournament plays. You're going to get them very, very cheap. Excuse me. So I think those are great calls. Lockett, and then kind of the counter to McBobo's Keenan Allen is Mike Williams, and I really like both of those guys. Mike Williams, obviously not a great week one, but I think he left the game injured for a little bit. Like he wasn't playing on all the snaps he could have. Miami's perimeter cornerbacks are very good. Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard. Both those guys are very good. So even Mike Williams getting 5 targets, 45 yards in that game, not great, but against that defense, not bad either. And he'll get a much, much easier matchup this week. So I love the Chargers stuff, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. And then he brought up Deebo Samuel too, and I'll throw Ayuk in there as well. I like both of those guys, and I think I'm a little bit over the field on both of them. Deebo did not have a great week one, and part of that was due to Ayuk doing really well. But as you can see, Deebo got 7 targets and his 2 rushes. Usually gets high leverage touches too, stuff that's close to the end zone. They like to get him involved. So I like Deebo to bounce back here. And I think Ayuk could keep it going too. His rapport with Purdy, I know it's a really small sample, but in NFL, we're always dealing with small samples. His rapport with Purdy going back to last year has been really, really good. And in the first game, 8 targets, led the team, 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. You would think that he'd be coming in a lot heavier owned, but he's not. 15% for Ayuk, 14% for Deebo. Playing against a Rams defense, which doesn't really scare you. Niners have a good team total, so I like both of those guys, Deebo and Ayuk. And while I'm thinking about it too, I don't think we talked about Purdy, but I think Purdy's in a good spot at quarterback. He's just cheap. He's very cheap at 5,700. So I forgot to mention him, but now that we're talking about the wide receivers, I think that they make a good pairing. All right, let's see. Stank Pit, I noticed you joined too. Are you here? Do you have your mic on? If so, I'd love to get your Bills takes, but if you're not around, that's totally fine. Let me see who I got. There's Stank. I saw him unmute there.
What's up?
Yo, what's going on, Stank? Hope you're doing well.
Yeah,
Do you think Buffalo bounces back here?
Oh yeah. Oh my bad, man. Huge bounce back spot for them. I mean, I love the Josh Allen stacks. They're gonna be chalky, but any way you can stack him and then get two receiving options and like a bring back like Jacobs or Adams. I think that's what I'm gonna be running today.
Yeah, absolutely.
No bias.
Yeah, he says no bias, because Stank is our resident Bills truther around here, so it's always nice to get his Bills opinion, and I agree. Like I think the Bills are in a great spot, and if the ownership wasn't so high, I would be more on it. And I'm a large field tournament player, so I'm kind of hyper focused on ownerships and stuff, but just on paper, it's hard not to think the Josh Allen, Steph Diggs stack is one of the best of the week, and you could see that play out in ownership. People want to play it, so that's not a bad call at all. I actually think if you could pick one stack this week that you feel really confident about, for me it would be Allen, Diggs, and if the ownership wasn't so high, then I would be more inclined. But just on paper, it looks great. And like Stank mentioned too, a lot of good bringbacks. I think Devontae Adams will be popular as well. You can see he's got 20% ownership, but Jacobs is one. 14% projects well. I think Jacobs is in a really good spot, and he kept his workload from the season before. You can see 19 attempts and I believe he had a couple targets. Yeah, 3 targets. So 22 opportunities for Josh Jacobs. I think he's in a good spot as well if you need a run back that's less owned than Devontae Adams. All right, I think that is. Let me see if there's any other. I know the cheap wide receivers, Jaden Reed is coming up a lot. Christian Watson is out officially. Kind of like how I mentioned earlier with the Green Bay Atlanta game. This game is just not appealing from a pace standpoint, from how much these teams like to run the ball. Specifically Atlanta too. Could really slow the game down, but the Packers play really slow as well. So Jaden Reed projects well. He's very cheap. I will say these cheap wide receivers that gain ownership, that have low floors, are usually ones that I like to avoid, especially when the game environment isn't great. So I think Jaden Reed, he's a good cheap piece, but I'm hesitant with him. Another one is Josh Reynolds here. I like Josh Reynolds better than Jaden Reed. You could see less ownership. I do think this is probably a little light. I think Josh Reynolds would probably be closer to like 10, maybe even like 12. But Josh Reynolds in a much more friendly game environment, and actually like sneakily had a lot of targets last week, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 7 targets. I think he was only behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. So yeah, if you can get 12 points, at 3,700, I'll take that any day of the week. So I like Josh Reynolds. Tyler Boyd kind of goes along with the Cincy stuff that I was talking about earlier. I expect Cincy to bounce back, and on that point too, I'll give fire emoji to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins as well, who I expect to bounce back this week, or at least not be as bad as they were last week. So I think that pretty much does it. I'll mention Christian Kirk as well as another guy who had a really subpar week 1. There's actually some merit to Christian Kirk doing better this week too. They were saying that Christian Kirk is, I was reading this week that Christian Kirk has done a lot better versus man defense historically in his career. And they played Indianapolis last week, who notoriously plays a ton of zone defense. And Kansas City notoriously plays a lot of man defense. So I actually think Christian Kirk, despite the really poor week 1, has a good bounce back opportunity, similar to those Cincinnati guys. All right.
Tristan. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Blake.
I saw a stat that Kansas City gives up like the most points to the slot, apparently. I saw like a stat on Twitter.
There you go. Yeah, more fuel to the fire for Christian Kirk. He was a guy that I was high on to this offseason, and I don't want to overreact after just 1 week. So I know that Ridley did really, really well, but I think Kirk has a lot of stuff working in his favor, including this ownership. You can see sub 5% when Ridley is going to come in over 20%. So that's a really, really good pivot. You can save $2,100 going down from Ridley to Kirk. So if you want a good tournament play, man, I think you could do a lot worse than Christian Kirk at 5,100 and probably the most friendly game environment on the slate. So yeah, thanks for that nugget, Blake. I'm in on Kirk. I think I'm going to be more than double the field on him today. All right, let's move to tight end. We have I don't see Kelsey. That's weird. I have a weird filter here. Okay. Sorry about that. There's Kelsey and Andrews up at the top, both returning after their week 1 absence. So we got a little bit more top heavy at tight end, obviously. McBobo, let's get you in here. Any opening thoughts on the tight end position this week?
Tight end's been a little tight for me right here. I'm looking at Laporta as one option. I liked his number of targets and just the volume that he was getting last game for Detroit. Other than that, I think there was one other tight end, and I'm blanking on who that other guy was for me. So I'm gonna leave it at Laporta.
Perfect. Yeah, sorry, let me get my sorry, Johnny, thank you for the heads up. I didn't realize I didn't have my fantasy labs up. Apologies for that. You guys are just watching the Discord. Sorry about that. I'm sorry, McBoba. I was massively distracted. Can you just tell me who you just mentioned right now?
Oh, it's Laporta for Detroit. I liked the volume that he was getting last week, so he was one of my tight end options. I guess I thought about it too. I was blanking on who else, but I think Everett for the Chargers. I think he can pick up a few more catches for the same reason I like Allen. Just for the fact you get someone for the short yardage receptions when you don't have Eckler in there. So I think he has potential, but Laporta is my more favorite play at tight end.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again in that Detroit Seattle game that I like a lot. So I like that Laporta call. He yeah, 5 targets last week, played on the majority of snaps, 58 out of 70. So yeah, I think the Laporta call is a good one. I like again that Chargers passing attack. I'll even throw alongside Everett. Their other guy is Donald Parham, excuse me, who actually caught a touchdown last week. 3 targets to Everett's. I want to say Everett was around the same too, but excuse me.
Yeah, it was that was actually pretty alarming last week. I think I don't have the off the top of my head the snap numbers, but they were a lot more even than you would expect. And once the Chargers got in the red zone, is pretty much Everett off, from on. So I'm a little bit more leery of playing either of them just because of that split. But in Herbert stacks, I think it does make sense. I just don't know which one I would want.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of a guessing game for sure. And I do have the snaps up here. Everett played 55 of the available 81, and Parham played 40. So Everett still had the edge there. But yeah, like Johnny said, Parham got the red zone looks, and Parham is much cheaper. But I do think neither of those guys are going to come with ownership. And like we've mentioned, I like that game environment. But it is a bit of a guessing game there. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, for reference, I just pulled it up too. In terms of routes run, Parham was only 6 behind Everett, 17 versus 23. So.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for that nugget. That's those are always helpful too. The routes run are extremely important because obviously can't score points if you're not running routes. So well, Johnny, since we have you on here, is there any tight ends that you think we should discuss?
I don't have super strong opinions. It seems like Luke Musgrave is getting quite a bit of ownership.
Yeah.
I was hoping it would stay a little bit lower after he, could have scored a touchdown last week, but fell down.
Yeah.
So that's just the ownership is concerning to me, but I like him just in a vacuum. I'm interested in the Waller Kittle range, especially I'm interested in Daniel Jones and Purdy stacks, to be honest, today.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them are going to come with ownership, I don't think, just because they were not good last week and they're in that weird range where they're expensive, but not don't have the Kelsey or Andrews floor. So I think in large fields, they're pretty good plays just for. I'm looking at the ownership I've got on them. 0.67 for Darren Waller and 0.83 for Kittle in large fields.
Yeah, I like both of those guys. Particularly Waller feels like a guy who could really separate at the position. But I also like Kittle as well. We talked about the Niners offense. Probably not going to have any issues with the LA defense today. So, but yeah, Waller is one. I think I actually was going to bring up Waller because he's my highest leverage piece as of right now. Like Johnny said, he's coming in around 1% ownership, and I'm at around 11 to 12% ownership across my lineups. So yeah, Waller, in terms of leverage, in terms of how much over the field I'm gonna have. Partly because he's 1% owned and I have 12%, so I'm at 12xing the field. But Waller's someone that I really, really like. And I know there were some injury concerns with him, but he's not on the injury report at all, so I feel a lot better about his spot this week against Arizona than I did last week versus Dallas. Obviously a much better spot. in week 2. So I really like that Waller call, and Kittle along the same lines too. Has extreme upside, is not going to be owned, and good leverage off of Ayuk and Debo, who are both coming in a lot higher owned. But I like the Niners offense as a whole today. Let's see. I did see Michael jump in the chat. Michael, are you around?
Yeah. Hey, what's up?
What's up, Mike? Hope your weekend's going well. Do you have any tight ends you'd like to throw into the ring?
Yeah, playing Ferguson. I'm playing Kincaid, and I'm wondering about Irv Smith Jr. I don't know if I trust Burrow with that calf, but I could see him getting like 50 yards or something. But I was wondering if you have any information on how you feel about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, first of all, I like the Ferguson and Kincaid calls. I think Kincaid, mentioned him earlier as kind of like gaining ownership throughout the week. He was about 5% to start the week, and now he's kind of, inching up to that 10% mark. I still think it's fine at 10%, but I am nervous that, when you flip over those cards and you see the ownership for him, that he could come in higher owned with Josh Allen being extremely popular. Now, Irv Smith, I think, is a really good pivot off of Musgrave. I think that game environment is a lot better. He's coming in at a fourth of the ownership of Musgrave, even less than that. So I think Irv Smith is a really good pivot off of Musgrave. And I'll be honest, I don't really think the Burrow calf, I guess I should say I'm not as concerned over the Burrow calf as much as other people are. I think it was more to do with the fact that the Browns defense is really, really good, and that game environment was not great, being played outdoors.
Awful weather too.
Bad weather. The Browns, can really slow the game down because they have a good defense and they want to run the ball. So I think that game environment was really shitty last week, and this one, at least on paper, is a lot better. So I'm willing to give Burrow another shot. Whether that translates to production for Irv Smith, I don't really know. He played just over half the snaps last week, but 5 targets. I mean, at 3,200 for tight end, I think he could do a lot worse than that. So I think Irv Smith is a good pivot off of Musgrave, to be honest. I think. Sorry, go ahead, Michael. Did you have something to add?
No, I just saying thanks. Yeah, wasn't sure about how many snaps he played last. I knew he got some targets, but that sounds good.
Yeah,
pivot off of what's his name there, Kincaid.
Musgrave. Yeah, Musgrave. I think Musgrave it will be the real chalky piece. It'll be interesting to see what Kincaid comes in at, but I think roughly 10%. Is not too high for Kincaid. I think he could do well, but as you can see here, Irv Smith projected higher than Kincaid and about half the ownership. So yeah, an interesting piece. But my lean here is to get away from the Musgrave chalk, to be honest. As you can see, we have these guys all projected very similarly. Similar ownership, or I'm sorry, similar ceiling projections, but just far less ownership. And I'd argue that the Green Bay Atlanta game is maybe the ugliest game environment on the entire slate. Outside, maybe the Jets Dallas game or Washington Denver, you can make a case for, but this Green Bay Atlanta game, I mean, it feels like I said this in chat last night, but it feels like a 17-14 game to me. So we'll see. That's enough on the tight ends, though.
Tristan, could I ask you about one of the first story?
Go ahead,
about
Blake.
Trotman? Sorry if someone brought him up, but Trotman, I have quite a bit of them this week. That's like a pump play. I don't know if you have an opinion on him or.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought him up, Blake, because I think we should talk about him. Obviously, no. Oh my God, his name is escaping me. What was the dude's name that's out this week? Someone help me. Yes, thank you. Yes, Dulcich is out for the Broncos, which increases the projection for Troutman. Now, Troutman is, at least on paper, more of a blocking tight end. That's how he has kind of broken into the league here and been able to stay in the league, I should say. but did get 5 targets last week, played on 46 out of the 64 snaps, and you would expect that to either continue or increase without Dulcich. So I do think, he's in a decent spot. This game environment, 38.5 point total, is not extremely attractive and kind of similar to the other guys. I'd almost rather pay 200 more and get to Irv Smith, or 300 more and get to Ferguson or Kincaid, who are Irv Smith and Ferguson are around the same ownership, but I think they're in better spots, and I think that they're better, receiving tight ends, if that makes sense. So I do have some Troutman, but I'm about half the field right now. He's coming in at 5 to 6%, and I have 2 to 3%. So not someone I'm like super excited to play, honestly, Blake. But I don't think he's a bad play, and he's probably as cheap as I would go at the tight end position. I know we did discuss Parham too. I could be talking to Parham or maybe Fant in that attractive game environment with Seattle, Detroit. But I'll be honest, I'm not too excited about Troutman, Blake.
I'm the same way. Not to just totally hurt your feelings or anything, Blake. I just feel like the ceiling's pretty low. I get, Dulcich is out. He wasn't on the field for a ton of snaps last week, though. I don't know that there's that much more for Troutman to get. So Troutman mainly plays inline. He ran 2/3 of his routes from the inline position, and Dulcich only ran 4 of 12 routes from there. So I just don't know that there's that much of an increased ceiling without Dulcich. And a low total game. Personally, I'm just not excited to get there unless I'm playing Russ Tax, which I probably won't be.
Yeah, I don't think I'm on Russ either, but yeah, I'm not too excited to play Troutman, but I think there's worse plays on the board too. So let's move on to defense here. Defense is interesting this week. It's not like last week where we had one. The Commanders were coming in, very, very highly owned over everyone else. It's a little bit more spread out this week. If I filter by projected own, you can see Arizona defense is coming in highly owned. I think Arizona, Tampa Bay, Dallas, and Tennessee are going to kind of separate themselves in terms of ownership. So I think if you're playing tournaments, especially large field stuff, it's pretty easy to get off of these defenses. Excuse me. Me and Johnny had a brief discussion in the chat earlier. I don't think that they're crazy honed to where you can't play them. So if you feel really good about one of these defenses, then I wouldn't say shy away from them just because of the ownership. But the only reason that I'm saying, I temper expectations is because I don't think that they're that much better than the pieces priced around them. I would much rather play the Jets defense at $100 more over Arizona at, a third of the ownership basically. So I don't think that, those defenses are bad plays, but I do think that there's good pivots around them. Is how I should phrase it. Johnny, do you have anything you'd like to add? Because I know we had that discussion earlier.
Yeah, it's okay to say you think they're bad plays. I know you're coming at me when I just woken up, so no, I'm kidding. Like I said, the most owned defense being 15% is not super concerning, especially when we came off a week with Commanders at double that. Mm-hmm. And I'm more of the opinion in large fields, I'm more okay playing them just because I think they will stay closer to their ownership projection. Whereas in small fields is where I'd be more likely to get off of them because I think it's more likely to condense. I do like the Jets a lot at almost the same price as the Cardinals and a third of the ownership. I will probably have the least out of those high projected owned defenses of the Cowboys. If a 4K defense is going to get there, I'm okay taking that L.
Yeah, I totally agree. We should mention too, and this was part of Johnny and I's discussion earlier, most of the ownership projections that people use or people look at is is like for large field tournaments. If you're playing in smaller field, single entry tournaments, ownership will really condense. So it's likely that the people that are higher owned are going to be even higher owned than what you're looking at, and the people that are lower owned are going to be even lower owned than what you're looking at, if that makes sense. So, for example, like Arizona defense is showing 14%. This is for large field stuff. So if you play in a small field tournament, small field single entry, you're probably going to be looking at them getting more than 14%. So it's just something to take, you want to take these ownerships with a grain of salt, because depending on what contests you're playing could dramatically change those ownerships. So just be cognizant of that. That's what Johnny was saying. If you're playing in 20 maxes, 150 maxes, these defenses are way less likely to get more ownership than what they're projecting, or significantly more ownership than what they're projecting, because they don't really stand out that much. They're just like a cut above the other defenses that are priced about around them, at least in terms of projection. But yeah, I think there's some really good pivots. Let's bring
real quick on that, just
go ahead,
to
Johnny.
illustrate that point. So Establish the Run, which is what I'm going off of this year, is actually they have a large ownership projection, which is usually what I'm reading off, and they also have a small field ownership projection that they're testing out. And for reference, this week they've got Buccaneers at 12 in large fields, and then 19 in small fields. Cowboys at 10 in large, and then 17 in small. So that's sort of going off what you're saying, where it'll tend to condense when you get into smaller fields.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. And that's some actual data instead of the anecdotal stuff that I was bringing up. But yeah, just more to the point that if you're playing in a smaller field, single entry stuff, ownerships will typically condense around the players or defenses that project well. So yeah, something to keep in mind there. Let's get Blake and McBobo. We'll start with Blake. Any defenses that you'd like to talk about other than the ones we just discussed?
Not really. No, I mean, I just have mainly the Jets, the Bucks, and some Cowboys thrown in. Pretty much it.
Yeah, absolutely. When I look at that Jets price and ownership, that's one that kind of jumps out at me. So, on the road versus Dallas, not a great spot, but their pricing and their ownership and, good. I'm looking at Arizona, who's in a worse spot in my opinion, and they're getting about 3 times the ownership. So yeah, I like the Jets as a cheap defense if you need a pivot off of Arizona. What about you, McBobo? Any defenses you'd like to discuss?
I don't think there's really much to add. I think the Bucks is probably my biggest lean, just for the fact that they can they can lock down Chicago. I mean, we know where the offense is moving through. It's all going to be through Fields. So I think in the same thought that I liked the potential for Fields, you have to look at the potential for the defense to really lock him up and cause him not to have a very productive day. So I think that's pretty much where I'm leaning towards DST.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, we'll run it. Of course, we ran longer than I wanted to, but that's okay. That's how it goes. Let's just build a quick lineup here. We won't build a full one. We'll leave a couple spots open. But McBobo, since we just had you on, you want to start us off with a quarterback here?
Let's go T-Law.
Yep. I had a feeling that's what you're going to say. I was kind of hoping you'd say that too. So yeah, I'm glad to see it. I think that's a good way to start off. Like we mentioned, I mentioned, 100 times that this game environment is really nice, highest total on the slate. So I really like attacking this game. Johnny, let's get you in here. Do you want to add someone? You could do running back, wide receiver, or a tight end there.
Let's go Derrick Henry.
Nice. Yes. Yeah, I think Derrick Henry, I don't know if we mentioned him when we were talking about running backs, but kind of the perfect piece. It doesn't have to be a part of a Chargers stack, but Chargers are a team kind of the opposite of Tennessee that will let you run the ball. Derrick Henry had a good amount of touches last week, 15 attempts and 3 targets. So yeah, if you can get 18 opportunities against this Chargers rush defense. I really like that. So I think that's a good call with Henry. Blake, do you want to start us off with a wide receiver?
Yeah, let's go Kirk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we discussed Kirk earlier. I think he's really good leverage off of the much more popular Calvin Ridley. I think Blake mentioned the KC giving up a lot of production to the slot wide receivers. I mentioned Kirk has done better against man defenses historically compared to zone defenses. I think and less than 5% ownership on Kirk. I think there's a lot of things working in Christian Kirk's favor here. So I like that call. Michael, if you're still, I think Michael jumped out here. So I'll go ahead and do one. Let's get a Kansas City piece in here. I had discussed him earlier. And I know Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been ruled officially active, but I like Pacheco, man. This is grading out much more as a large field tournament lineup, but I like Pacheco at 3%. Saw decent, I should say, not the best production last week, eight attempts and 4 targets, but I think those 4 targets are sticky, and I think if this game, if they're able to run the ball, that he could get into like the 12, 13 rush attempts there. So I think Pacheco is a really interesting tournament play. McBobo, let's go back to you. You could fill out a wide receiver spot or get a tight end in there.
Looking at that, since we already got somebody for T-Law, let's go Tyler Lockett. I like that price point. So let's go with him. Let's go 6,100 Tyler Lockett.
Perfect. Yeah, I like that call too. I know Blake said he liked that call, and I'm heavier on the field than Lockett as well. So perfect. I like that one. Johnny, do you want to either fill out our last wide receiver spot, or you can get our tight end?
And what are we looking like with salary?
We have 47.50 per player left, but we haven't filled out a defense, so that will obviously help. I'll just throw in Washington defense just as kind of a middling defense to give us a better idea of where we're at. So 5,300 per player left, Johnny.
Can we fit in Ridley? I want to double stack T-Law.
Yeah, double stack. Yeah, absolutely. And we can go cheaper at defense. I didn't realize Washington was. Let's go with the Jets defense, like I mentioned earlier, just for the time being. And then Blake, how about you? You get our last tight end spot, and then we'll leave the flex open to let people do what they wish.
Let's go Irv Smith.
Irv Smith, I like it. Perfect. That leaves you 5,900 in the flex. You could do a bunch of things there. I know Dylan is 5,900. Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Montgomery, Gabe Davis as well. Ayuk, Mike Williams. There's a bunch of different ways you could fill that out, but I think this is a really good lineup. Honestly, I know some of my lineups will be looking just like this with the Chiefs Jaguars stack. Pieces of that Tennessee Chargers game, pieces of that Bengals Ravens game, and then of course the Seattle Detroit game, like we talked about. So yeah, I think this is a really solid lineup. If you happen to play this or some variation of it and you win, make sure you throw it up in winning screenshots and tag Blake, McBobo, Johnny, and myself. We'd be happy to see that. So thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll leave it up. Blake, McBobo, Johnny, Stank. If you guys got any closing thoughts that you'd like to throw out there, go ahead. Now's your time to shine.
My closing
We'll be
thought
taking
is
a 5% commission if you win.
Yeah, Johnny.
5%. Yeah, that's good. Let's do it.
There you go. 5% for Johnny and 5% for McBobo if you win. So and make sure you get their Venmos and the money will be on their way. All right, guys. Good luck in week 2. Yeah, Stank says go Bills. We'll see if the Allen Diggs stack works out for everyone. Stank, I'm sorry, I should have got you in on the lineup. That's my bad. I always just look for whoever's like not muted right there, and that's kind of how I remind myself who is who's in the chat with us. So apologies there, but we'll get you in next week. And I'll be back there's 2 Monday night games tomorrow, so it'll be nice to have a classic slate on a Monday. So I'll do another live stream tomorrow for those who are interested. All right, everyone. Good luck
no
today.
problem. I'll sit back and listen.
Okay, sounds good, Stank. Sounds good. All right, everyone. Good luck and thanks for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. See you guys.